She stood on his porch every morning with a paper plate and a plastic fork, never knowing the man inside could buy the world. But on Christmas Eve, when the black SUVs surrounded her home, Lily realized her poor old friend had one last mission to complete. The wind off the Atlantic didn't care about the prestige of Greenwich, Connecticut. It bit just as hard at the limestone mansions as it did at the drafty windows of the small apartments 3 miles inland. Inside the sprawling estate at the end of Cherry Hill Lane, Elias Thorne sat in a leather chair that cost more than most mid-sized sedans. The house was a masterpiece of glass and steel, yet it felt like a tomb. At 74, Elias was a ghost in his own life. To the Wall Street Journal, he was a ruthless billionaire who had revolutionized defense technology. To the Pentagon, he was the man who held the keys to the next century of warfare. But to himself, he was just a man with a bad hip and a heart that felt like it had been encased in ice since his wife and son were taken in a tragic accident 20 years ago. He watched the snow fall, his breakfast a protein bar and a lukewarm cup of black coffee sitting untouched on a silver tray. He had all the money in the world, and yet he was starving for something he couldn't buy. 3 miles away, 10-year-old Lily was bustling in a kitchen that smelled of toasted bread and cheap margarine. Her mother, Martha, was already dressed in her nurse's scrubs, her face etched with the kind of exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. Martha watched as Lily carefully wrapped 2 slices of buttered toast and a hard-boiled egg in a napkin. She felt a pang of guilt. They were barely scraping by, and here was her daughter, insisting on taking a portion of their breakfast to the lonely man on her way to the bus stop. "Is he even there today, Lily?" Martha asked, her voice soft. "It's freezing out there. Maybe you should just eat that yourself. You need your strength for school." Lily shook her head, her blonde pigtails dancing. "He's always there, Mom. He sits by the window. He looks like he's waiting for someone who never comes. If I don't go, he'll think the world forgot him." Martha sighed, reaching out to tuck a stray hair behind Lily's ear. "You have such a big heart, baby. Just be quick. That neighborhood, it's not for people like us." The security guards at the gate usually have eyes like hawks. "They let me through now," Lily said with a proud smile. "I told them I'm the morning delivery service." As Lily stepped out into the biting cold, clutching the warm bundle against her chest, she didn't see herself as a charity worker. She saw a friend. She didn't know about the billions of dollars, the military contracts, or the iron-fisted reputation of the man in the mansion. She only knew that everyone deserved a warm breakfast and a smile before the day began. What she didn't know was that this morning's walk would be the start of a countdown. A countdown that would end on Christmas Eve with a knock on her door, or that would change their lives forever. Before we go any further into Lily and Elias's incredible journey, we want to give a very special welcome to all of you joining us today at Golden Heart Stories. We believe that the smallest acts of kindness are the ones that truly change the world. We are so grateful to have you in our community of story lovers. Where are you watching from today? Please let us know in the comments below. We love seeing how far these stories travel. If you believe that everyone deserves to be seen, hit that like button and subscribe to join our family. It helps us keep sharing these messages of hope and justice. The wrought iron gates of the Thorne estate usually hummed with a silent, menacing electricity, but to Lily, they were just the entrance to a friend's house. She slipped through the pedestrian side gate, her boots crunching on the pristine white powder of the driveway. High above, in the master suite, Elias watched the small, colorful figure approach. He found himself standing before she even reached the porch, his joints protesting the sudden movement. When he opened the heavy oak door, the scent of the cold morning rushed in, followed by the much warmer scent of Lily's toasted bread. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne," Lily beamed, handing him the napkin-wrapped bundle. "I put extra butter on it today because it's extra cold." My mom says butter is like a blanket for your insides. Elias took the package, his hands, which had signed treaties and billion-dollar mergers, trembling slightly. He looked down at the simple meal. For decades, he had been served by world-class chefs on fine-bone china. Yet those meals always tasted like ash. This toast, warmed by a child's hands, felt like a holy relic. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice raspy from disuse. "You shouldn't be out in this. The radio says a storm is brewing." "I'm tough," Lily replied, puffing out her chest. "My dad was a soldier. He used to say that a little snow never stopped a mission." Elias froze. The air in the grand foyer suddenly felt heavy. "A soldier?" he asked softly. "He's not here anymore," Lily said, her eyes dropping for a fleeting second before her bright smile returned. "He went on a mission a long time ago and didn't come back. But Mom says he's watching over us. That's why I bring you breakfast. I think maybe someone is bringing him breakfast too, wherever he is." Elias felt a sharp, stabbing pain in his chest, not a heart attack, but a heart awakening. He knew the cost of missions. He knew the names of the men who didn't come back, often because of the very technology his companies created. He looked at this little girl, living in a cramped apartment, sharing her meager food with a man she thought was a pauper, while he sat on a mountain of gold built on the sacrifices of men like her father. "Wait here," Elias whispered. He turned and retreated into the shadows of the house, returning a moment later with a small silver coin. It wasn't money. It was a high-level military challenge coin, burnished with an emblem most people would never recognize. "Take this. It's a lucky charm. If you ever feel like the storm is too big, you just hold on to this." Lily's eyes widened as she took the cool metal. "It's beautiful. It looks like a star." "It's more than a star, Lily," Elias said. And for the first time in 20 years, a genuine smile broke through his weathered face. "It's a promise." When Lily arrived home that afternoon, the lucky charm was tucked safely in her pocket. But she couldn't keep the secret for long. Martha was folding laundry, her mind racing through the math of the electric bill and the upcoming rent, when Lily placed the silver coin on the table. "Look what Mr. Thorne gave me, Mom. He said it's a promise." Martha stopped mid-fold. She picked up the coin, her nursing instincts immediately noting the weight and the professional engraving. This wasn't a toy. This was something that belonged to a world of power and secrets. "Lily, where did he get this?" Martha's voice was tight with a sudden, protective sharp edge. "We talked about this. You take him food because it's kind. But you don't take things from him. Especially not whatever this is. He's just a nice old man, Mom. He's lonely. He lives in that big house all by himself with no one to talk to." That big house? Martha's heart sank. She had assumed the lonely old man was a gardener or a caretaker living in one of the carriage houses. If he lived in the main Thorne estate, he wasn't just a neighbor, he was someone out of their league. "I don't like it," Martha whispered, more to herself than to Lily. "People like that, they don't just give things away. There's always a catch. Tomorrow. You aren't going there. We're staying inside. The storm is getting worse anyway." "But Mom, he'll be hungry," Lily pleaded. "He is more money than we'll see in 10 lifetimes." "Lily, he's not hungry." Martha's voice cracked, the stress of the season finally bubbling over. "He's a billionaire playing at being a hermit. We are just with the help he doesn't have to pay." The room went silent. Lily's lower lip trembled. "He's my friend," she said quietly, before turning and running to her room. Martha sank into a kitchen chair, burying her face in her hands. She looked at the silver coin on the table. It felt heavy with an implication she couldn't understand. She wanted to protect her daughter from the disappointment of the world, from the way the wealthy looked down on the struggling. She didn't realize that in the mansion on the hill, Elias Thorne was currently staring at a wall of monitors, his face illuminated by the blue light of a global database, searching for a name he had seen on Lily's school backpack. He wasn't acting like a billionaire anymore. He was acting like a general. And the storm was indeed coming. As we reach the middle of our story, it's a great time for our second reflection. Does Martha's fear for her daughter feel relatable to you? Sometimes it's hard to trust the intentions of others when life has been tough. If you're enjoying the drama and want to see how Elias uses his power, please take a moment to like this video and share it with a friend who loves a good mystery. The storm arrived with a vengeance that night, blanketed in a thick, suffocating gray. By morning, the roads were treacherous, and the power in Lily's small apartment complex flickered before dying out completely. The heat vanished, and the silence that followed was heavy with the scent of old dust and cold air. Martha huddled with Lily on the sofa, wrapped in every blanket they owned. But Lily's eyes were fixed on the window, looking toward the hill. He doesn't have anyone to check the pipes, Mom, or to make sure the fire stays lit. Lily, please, Martha shivered. Mr. Thorne has a whole staff, I'm sure. He doesn't, Lily insisted. He told me he sent them all away years ago. He said he liked the quiet, but quiet is cold, Mom. Against her better judgment, and driven by a strange pull of guilt she couldn't explain, Martha realized they couldn't stay in the freezing apartment. The emergency shelters were miles away, and her old car would never make it through the 3-foot drifts. There was only one place within walking distance that had a backup generator, the mansion. With Lily leading the way like a tiny, determined explorer, they trudged through the snow. When they finally reached the porch, Martha felt like a trespasser. She reached out to knock, but the door swung open before her knuckles could graze the wood. Elias stood there, wrapped in a heavy wool cardigan, looking older than he had the day before. I was wondering when you'd get here, he said, his voice surprisingly firm. Come in. The kitchen is still warm. As they sat in the massive, industrial-grade kitchen, Martha felt the sharp contrast of their lives. She was a woman who counted pennies for milk. He was a man who had a commercial generator humming in the basement. But as Elias moved slowly, painfully to pour them mugs of hot cocoa, the billionaire facade crumbled. He looked like any other grandfather, albeit one who lived in a museum. Thank you for taking us in, Martha said, her voice stiff with pride. We'll leave as soon as the plows come. Stay as long as you need, Elias replied, sitting across from them. Your daughter has been feeding me for months, Martha. It's the least I can do to provide a roof for a few hours. While Martha warmed her hands, Lily wandered toward the edge of the great room, drawn to a grand piano covered in a velvet cloth. Beside it sat a mahogany desk cluttered with framed photographs. Mr. Thorne, who is this? Lily asked, pointing to a photo of a young man in a dress blue military uniform. Elias's posture went rigid. Martha stood up, ready to scold Lily for prying. But Elias held up a hand. That's my son, David, he said, his voice cracking. He was a captain. He looks like my dad, Lily whispered, picking up a smaller, tarnished frame that had been tucked behind a stack of papers. As Lily moved the frame, a small, folded piece of yellowed paper fell out. Martha moved to pick it up, intending to hand it back to Elias. But her eyes caught the header Department of the Army official notification. Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized that paper. She had a similar one framed in her mind, dated 8 years ago. But as she glanced at the date on this one, her breath hitched. It was from the same month, the same year, and the same location in the Middle East where her husband had been stationed. Elias saw her face change. He stood up, the silence in the room suddenly deafening. Your husband, he was with the 10th Mountain Division, wasn't he? Martha nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "Sergeant Thomas Miller." Elias closed his eyes, a single tear escaping and rolling into the deep lines of his face. "I've spent 8 years looking for you," he whispered. "My son David, he wasn't just a captain. He was the commanding officer who made the call to evacuate the ridge. Your husband stayed behind to man the rear guard. He stayed so my son's unit could get to the choppers." The air left the room. Lily looked between the two adults, sensing the tectonic plates of their lives shifting. "My son lived because of Thomas," Elias choked out, but David couldn't live with the guilt. "He died 2 years later, a broken man. I've tried to find Thomas's family, but the records were complicated. I'm the man who designs the systems that send men to war, Martha, and I couldn't even find the family of the man who saved my own blood." Martha sank back into her chair, the weight of the revelation crashing over her. The lonely old man wasn't just a stranger. He was the living connection to the man she had lost. And her daughter, through some divine instinct, had been feeding the father of the man her husband died to save. The secrets are out, and the connection is deeper than anyone could have imagined. Isn't it amazing how the world works in circles? If you're moved by this discovery, please leave a comment with the word faith to show you believe in the power of destiny. For the next 2 days, as the snow continued to bury the world outside, the atmosphere inside the mansion shifted from cold formality to a fragile, beautiful warmth. The grand kitchen, once a place of sterile silence, was now filled with the sound of Lily's laughter and the sizzle of actual meals being cooked. Martha found herself moving through the halls not as a guest, but as a woman reclaiming a piece of her own history. Elias opened his private library to Lily, watching with a chest full of bittersweet joy as she explored the shelves. He told her stories about her father, not the soldier, but the man he had learned about through military debriefs and letters from the unit. He told her about Thomas's bravery, his jokes, and his unwavering love for a baby girl back home. "He's a hero, Lily," Elias said one evening by the fire, his hand resting on the silver coin he'd given her. "And heroes leave behind a light that never goes out. You have that light in you." Martha watched them from the doorway, her heart aching and healing at the same time. She saw Elias not as a billionaire, but as a grieving father who had finally found a way to say thank you. They shared stories of loss and survival, bridging the gap between a high society mogul and a weary nurse. For a moment, it felt as though the tragedy of the past had finally been given a place to rest. They were no longer the rich man and the poor neighbor. They were a family bound by a sacrifice made in a desert half a world away. But the peace of the mansion was an illusion that the outside world was ready to shatter. On the morning of December 23rd, the plows finally cleared the main road. The arrival of the physical world brought a cold reality back into the house. A sleek, black car pulled into the driveway, not one of Elias's, but a corporate vehicle. A man in a sharp suit, Elias's lead legal counsel, stepped out. He didn't see a family, he saw liability. He cornered Martha in the hallway while Elias was upstairs resting. "I don't know what your angle is, Mrs. Miller," the lawyer whispered, his voice like ice, "but Mr. Thorne is a vulnerable man with a massive estate. If you think a few days in the snow and some old war stories entitle you to his fortune, you're mistaken. I've already contacted the local authorities to ensure a smooth transition back to your apartment." Martha's pride, which had been softening, hardened into a diamond-sharp edge. "I don't want his money," she snapped. "We were here because we were freezing." The lawyer smiled thinly. "Of course. But the optics of a billionaire housing a local nurse and her child. It looks like predatory behavior. For your sake, and for the sake of your daughter's reputation, I suggest you leave now, before questions are asked that you can't answer." Martha felt a wave of shame wash over her. She looked at the opulence around her and felt like a fool. She had allowed herself to believe they belonged here. When Elias came downstairs, he found Martha frantically packing their few belongings. "Martha, what's happening?" he asked, his voice trembling. "We have to go," Elias Martha said. Her eyes red. This was a mistake. "We don't belong in this world. Your people, they made it very clear what we are to you." Elias looked at his lawyer, who stood with an air of smug professional duty. And then back at Martha. "Martha, wait. I didn't know. But the damage was done." Martha grabbed Lily's hand, the young girl's face falling in confusion. "But I didn't say goodbye," Lily cried. "We're going home, Lily," Martha said firmly, "back to where we belong." As the door clicked shut behind them, Elias Thorne stood in the center of his vast, empty foyer. The silence returned. But this time, it was deafening. He looked at the lawyer, his eyes burning with a fire that hadn't been seen in decades. "You think you were protecting my assets?" Elias whispered, his voice deadly quiet. "You just threw away the only thing I had left that was worth keeping. Get out. You're fired. The bond has been broken by the world's cynicism, and Lily is heading back to a cold apartment for Christmas. It's the lowest point for our protagonists. Have you ever felt like people judged you because of where you came from? It's a pain that cuts deep. If you're rooting for Elias to fix this, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the conclusion of Golden Heart Stories. Christmas Eve arrived with a biting, silent cold. In their small apartment, the space heaters hummed a low, pathetic tune, barely keeping the frost from the inside of the glass. Martha sat at the kitchen table, staring at the silver coin. She felt a deep, hollow ache in her chest. She had acted out of protection. But looking at Lily, who sat silently by the window staring at the darkened street, she knew she had broken something precious. Lily hadn't asked for her breakfast supplies that morning. She hadn't asked about the tree. She was simply waiting for a miracle that felt impossible. Up on the hill, Elias Thorne was making a choice. He sat at his mahogany desk, the phone lines to Washington, D.C. buzzing. He was no longer the frail man who needed help with his toast. He was a man with a legacy to secure. He looked at a file on his desk, Thomas Miller's service record. He could let them go. He could send a check and call it a day. That's what a billionaire would do. But Elias remembered the taste of the buttered toast. He remembered the way Lil looked at the photo of his son. He realized that money was a wall, but love was a bridge. He picked up a special encrypted handset. "This is Thorne," he said, his voice echoing with the authority of a four-star general. "I need the honor guard, and I need the transport manifest for the Miller family. Now." The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon on Christmas Eve when the roar of heavy engines filled the quiet suburban street. Martha jumped at the sound, her heart racing. She pulled back the curtain and gasped. For black SUVs, flanked by two military police motorcycles with their lights flashing blue and red, pulled up to the curb of their modest apartment building. Neighbors peered out of their windows in shock. Martha's first instinct was fear. Had the lawyer followed through on his threats? A tall, silver-haired officer in a formal dress uniform stepped out of the lead vehicle. He walked with military precision to their front door. A heavy knock echoed through the room. Martha opened it, her breath catching in her throat. "Mrs. Martha Miller?" the officer asked. Removing his cap, "I am Brigadier General Vance. I'm here on behalf of the Office of the Secretary and at the personal request of Mr. Elias Thorne." Lily pushed past her mother, her eyes wide. "Is Mr. Thorne okay?" The general smiled softly at the little girl. "He's more than okay, Lily. He's waiting for you. But first, I have a delivery." Two soldiers stepped forward carrying a large, heavy wooden chest embossed with the seal of the United States Army. Inside wasn't just gold or documents. It was the fully processed, long overdue retroactive benefits and the silver star that Thomas Miller had earned but had been lost in a sea of red tape for years. But that wasn't the gift. As the neighbors watched in awe, a final car pulled up. Elias Thorne stepped out, aided by a cane, but standing taller than he had in decades. He walked up the stairs and stood before Martha. "I'm sorry, Martha," Elias said, his voice thick with emotion. "I spent my life building weapons to protect a country. But I forgot to protect the people who actually bleed for it. I've established a foundation in Thomas's name. You'll never have to worry about a bill again. And Lily, your education is secured through doctoral levels at any university in the world." Lily didn't care about the university. She ran forward and threw her arms around the old man's waist. "You came back." Elias hugged her tight, tears streaming into his white beard. "I'll always come back for my commanding officer." The lonely old man and the poor girl stood in the middle of a snowy Connecticut street, surrounded by the power of the United States military, proving that the greatest force on earth wasn't a missile or a billion-dollar contract. It was a piece of buttered toast and a heart that refused to let someone be forgotten. Moral justice had been served. Karma had come full circle, and as the snow began to fall again, it didn't feel cold at all. It felt like home. Thank you for staying with us through this journey of the heart. Lily's story reminds us that no act of kindness is ever wasted, and that justice often finds its way to those who wait with grace. Elias and Lily's bond shows us that family isn't just about blood, it's about the sacrifices we make for one another. Before you go, we have one final question for you. If you could say one thing to someone who feels forgotten this holiday season, what would it be? Let us know in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone needs to hear today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story from Golden Heart Stories. From our heart to yours, have a beautiful day.